Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to start off with our questions. And our first question is going to be to Partha Prabhu. First off, let's get started with with the definition of energy in a relationship. What do you mean by the give and take of energy in a relationship?
Okay, I'll just demonstrate this by, I'm going to show you a few slides. So, we want to examine energy in marriage. And Srila Prabhupada, he referred to this once in a lecture in 1972. Behind every great man is a great woman. This is a fact. Krishna has got also energy, the original Purusha. Radharani, energy, Prakriti. Krishna is engladdened in the presence of Radharani. That is nature. Similarly, a man, he becomes energized if he has got a good wife or good mother. This is the history of the whole world. Any great man in this world, you will find that behind him he has got a good wife or good mother, Prakriti energy that energizes him. So in a marital relationship, there's going to be this energy. And it's not just that the husband is getting energy from the wife, but also there's an exchange between the two of them, but creates kind of a synergistic energization, which we would like to explore a bit. So ultimately, we want to have relationships that are an inspiration to both of us, and not that we're in a stage of opposition. So we're going to explore a bit how in relationships we can energize each other and avoid the scenarios where we become like opponents. So in a healthy, dynamic relationship, the husband is going to be supporting his wife through things like protection in terms of physical, emotional, financial, and spiritual aspects of life. And also, he's going to be giving the wife affection in terms of verbal appreciation, in terms of presence, kindness, openness, and acts of service. And the wife receiving those offerings of affection and love and service and protection, she's going to reciprocate with appreciation, affection, comfort, gentleness, kindness, service, and nurturing. And so that creates a cycle of this healthy reciprocation. And when that dynamic is there in a marriage, it creates this synergy of the couples receiving this energy, a feeling of security, and a feeling of love. So that is a healthy relationship when that mutual exchange of these different aspects of relationships are being reciprocated in a healthy way. That can break down sometimes in a marriage if some of these aspects they're either neglected over time or just not cultivated. So the breakdown in that synergy of the relationship, it can start from either side, the husband or the wife, or it can kind of start simultaneously if they take the relationship for granted. But it can manifest as things like the husband, he maybe stops giving emotional support to the wife. Maybe he stops giving verbal appreciation over time. He stops giving the wife his sense of presence. He stops being, very open with her and honest. And as a result of that, the wife, her reciprocation becomes a little diminished. Maybe she becomes less affectionate. Maybe she becomes less gentle in her dealings. And so when that happens, then gradually this sense of energy and synergy and love becomes diminished, and relationships become more like an opposition than an inspiration. So we don't want relationships like that. We don't want a relationship like Herlinda and Ajian, right, where she says, "You never say you love me," and he says, "I told you the day I married you, if anything changes, I'll let you know." That is not going to work in a relationship. Um, we'd like to explore this topic today in relationship with what Srila Prabhupada expected from us in terms of our Grihastha ashrams. And it was interesting, Prabhupada, he said once, hero means someone who others want to follow as example of the best type of person. So all of you, you all become like that, perfect examples of Krishna conscious heroes and heroines. And so how can we do that in the Grihastha ashram? Srila Prabhupada said this in a letter in 1968. We require so many examples of householders to set examples for others how in Krishna consciousness we can live peacefully and sanely even in married life. So Srila Prabhupada, he's putting an onus of responsibility upon all of us to really cultivate healthy, dynamic, thriving relationships. And it's not something we're just doing for ourselves. I mean, we want happiness, we want a happy family, we want that stability. But we can see Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to set examples for society. So our Grihastha ashram, it's not just something that's going on behind closed doors, but it's also very important that behind those closed doors that we have these healthy dynamic relationships where we're actually energizing each other, and by that relationship it gives us the strength and encouragement to go out into the world and do whatever we're doing, whether it's preaching or working or teaching. That facilitates us doing the rest of the activities in our life. So it's an extremely important responsibility for Grihasthas, and it's important that we learn to be aware of that sense of the dynamic of our relationship, how it's facilitating us, how it's giving us that energy, and where we can possibly get a little off track and have that sense of connection energy diminished.
Thank you. Very good. You know, you remind me of something John Lennon said, which was, behind every great woman, there's a happy idiot.
And speaking of happy idiots, no, the characteristics that you laid out seem to be somewhat defined for men and women, but sometimes we see in couples that there's different shifts in personality types. Can you speak to that at all?
Sure. There's
Different shifts in personality types.
Right, so that, you know, female might be more interested in making a living, or the husband might be more nurturing, you know, things like that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's why it's very important in relationships that there is a very open and honest level of communication and mutual understanding, and that they learn to work together as a team to see what works for the relationship. In relationships, there's a stage in the beginning where everything seems very harmonious. You seem like one, just like our comedic introduction where you couldn't tell a difference between the two of you. So that was something like the beginning stage in marriage, that you can't really see any difference between you. The second stage in marriage is one of differentiation, where you begin to discover you do have differences, and that can be a little challenging because it can take a lot of investment of energy to learn to integrate those differences into some kind of a harmonious balance in your relationship. So like you're saying, maybe the woman, she is more outgoing, maybe she wants to work, maybe the husband is more nurturing. So over time, they're going to have to learn how to balance their natures into some harmonious working system, and that can be a bit of a growing pain in marriage. It's kind of a normal stage in marriages that sometimes couples end up in a power struggle over who's going to do what and why, and it becomes, in the beginning, it's like we. In that second stage, it's like me versus you. And really what the couple wants to do is work through that stage of differentiation into some kind of synergistic harmony where they see it's me and you as actually we, and that what's beneficial for the relationship, for the marriage, for Srila Prabhupada's movement. And so that requires a lot of development of Vaishnav skills such as humility and patience and tolerance and compassion, to be willing to do what it is needed to make those kind of adjustments to make your differences work for the benefit of the relationship.
Thank you so much for that. Good.
Okay.
Did you have any?
Yeah, no, I think no, it's really, really helpful and useful information. I like how you broke everything down, these different stages. Thank you.
Oh, I do have a follow-up. And I imagine you said, people have to negotiate. I imagine that even in a good relationship, there are peaks and valleys of that negotiation going on, eh?
Yes, yeah.
So that if you're in a valley, it doesn't mean that you're always going to be in the valley.
Right.
And it helps when you understand that.
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada, he wrote us a letter one time. We were on this farm project, and it was Prabhupada described this verse, Matras Pashastu Kuntiya, how the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress comes and goes, and one must learn to tolerate this without being disturbed. And that letter was so prophetic because so many things happened in this community. There was extreme lows, but it was your duty to somehow persevere, and in the ultimate end, that if you try to follow Krishna's desire and instructions, things come out for the better. But sometimes you do have to have that determination to work through things. In your communities and also in your relationships, there can be what seems like low points, but in reality, it's actually a test from Krishna to make you stronger in your relationship.
Thank you so much for that encouragement.